Hi Annie, it's Mark and Alex here. We're just going to go through your mix a little bit. Going to do a little bit of listening and some feedback on some of the bits here. Okay, so I'm just going to start with the drums and have a bit of a quick listen. I'm going to turn the mic off for a minute, 'cause otherwise it will come back through the recording, and I'll let you know what we think. Thanks. What I've noticed at the moment, Annie, it's really good. Like I just had a look at the compressor a second ago. The compressor's at a really good level. You've slammed it quite nicely with this track. It's got a lot of punch, but there's a lot of like mid-range boxiness coming through. So I'm just taking some out of this first EQ, and it sounds like there's a little bit of spill from the snare drum, which when I listened to the drums as a whole, it was tripping it up a little bit, just in terms of its sort of like rhythm and movement. And it's obviously coming through quite hot here. Probably is just down to that compressor being slammed. So we'll just keep an eye on our levels here, just to make sure we can bring those down. I like the second EQ you've put on as well, just to sort of like in post, obviously just to shave off some of the top end. That's a good technique there. Let's see if we can noise gate it a little bit, just to sort of shape that kick drum, okay? I'm going to put the noise gate in first as well, just so we can grab the transients first of all, and then with the EQ and the compression, we can do that afterwards, okay? Just so when we EQ and when we compress, the noise gate is just going to give us just what we want. All right, Annie, I've just given you a bit more of like the upper mid range, just to add a bit of click to the kick drum. Now we've noise gated it. The bottom end's good. I've just opened up a bit more, but you can see here I've just taken away some of the mid range, which is that classic boxiness. Let's hear it now. Great, and the signal's just a bit hot, so I like the compression on there. Just might bring that fader down a little bit. That's it. You can see on the compressor there as well that it's we're in the red over here. So let's just bring this. We've got the makeup gain here in the first stage. The output gain will just bring up the whole signal overall. But if we want to add some of that makeup, that first stage gain back in, that's what we'll use that for. Let's just bring this back a little. There you go, and you can see we've got a bit more headroom to play with on this master fader here as well. And what I did with the noise gate is obviously pulled the threshold right over, but gave it a little bit of attack and release just to let the transients breathe a little bit. And you can always tighten the bookends of these up just to get a bit more snap out of the kick. All right. Ah, you like everything loud. This is good. Again, we're just slamming the compressor. Sounds great. It's really popping the snare. We've given it a bit more of the top end, just to have it snap through, um, and to pull away some of that boxy mid range a little bit as well. Let's just even up the dynamics here as well. Just having a play with the knee here, and as you can look on this graph here, the knee is the relationship between the threshold and the ratio and how hard that compression is. This knee isn't doing much, though the opto compressor you've opted for is naturally a slightly slower compressor. If you want something a bit harder, maybe try the FET, and you should be able to see that knee isn't changing either. Why isn't the knee changing? It's not getting harder. Yeah, this is I mean, you can see the threshold should move. Oh, hey, there you go. On this graph here, um, but it's odd that we're not seeing the knee move. Is that a glitch or what's going on? But yeah, knee is the relationship between the threshold and the ratio. So you usually want a harder, quicker knee, right? Just to make sure that things are a bit snappier. Maybe try the FET compressor. Let's see how this guy gets on with your snare drum. Yeah, just experiment with the different compressor engines here, Annie, and see what one sort of come up with. There's a little distortion circuit here as well if you want to add some saturation to anything that you compress as well. Once again, we'll just bring in a noise gate just to curve those hi-hats that are going on a little bit as well, okay? So a good philosophy or whatever to start with your noise gates is to just push the threshold way up. So we've got nothing, ease it back until something cuts through the threshold, the level of the snare drum, and then we can play with the attack and release here just to shape the bookends of the transients. Now, it might sound choppy like this, which would put you off, but remember you've got the overheads to fill in, excuse me, a little bit of the snare's decay and also some reverb on the snare, because I don't think there's any. Have you busted it away? No, not yet. There's no reverb on the drums yet. So that will help a little bit with the decay and sustain of the snare drum. Let me show you here. If I bring in the overheads over that snare. Alright, so it's helped fill the snare drum out a little bit, but maybe if we can either just use an insert or you can send it all the way to a bus. Looks like you've got a few buses here set up, which is pretty cool. But I'm just going to put an insert on for now. And again, I'm going to say this is an alternative mix, so you can go in and play what we've done here. Let's just put in a reverb just to give it a little bit of depth here. Space Design is a great one to use. Let's use maybe like a medium-sized plate. There's a drum plate, how about that? We want to keep dry at 100% because we don't want to sort of lose any volume of that original dry track. You got the envelope here, which shows you like the decay and sustain and whatnot of the drum's reverb, or the reverb that you put on this track, and then there's the sample, because it's a sample based reverb. Length and size. Let's have a little look here. and just yeah, the output EQ is here as well, so you can help you shape the timbre of the snares. Reverb, cool. It's pushed it back a little bit, which is nice, and then you can also use some mix bus reverb for the whole drums too. The overheads, you've got this huge sort of boost happening here in the top mid range. You've got an appropriate low cut, which is good. And actually, this kind of suits the cymbal sounds. The cymbals don't sound too harsh or anything. It's sounding all right. Just be careful when you are boosting in EQ that you're introducing more to the dynamic range there and making it a little louder. Cool, just a little bit of shape in there overall, Annie, but not too much to really fuss over. Just a bit of EQ and some gate work on the kick and the snare. And yeah, if you just want a bit more space and depth, you've got the drums mix bus here. We've put them in these lovely folders, which means that you can add what we call. I mean, there's a compressor on there that's off. That we may have put that on there just to bring the volume of the drums up when we were tracking. This is what you call glue compression. So then you've got some treated drums here in the mix bus folder, but then you can add a little bit of mix bus compression and reverb just to tighten your drums up a little bit. Let's see what this SSL bass compressor's up to. Great. So just giving the snares a little bit of life there. All right, back to it. Sorry about that. There'll be a cut in the video just because we were interrupted by one Lucy Riley. What were we looking at? Yeah, the mixed bus compression. You can hear now that it's just kind of gluing it a little bit together. You know, you got individual sort of compression, the kick and the snare drum, and leveling on the overheads. But this will just help lift up the whole drum vibe. Okay. Which is great. It sounds nice and loud, and we're not peaking. We've sort of controlled our dynamics a little bit more. Great. I'm going to bring in the bass, and then we're going to head over to the vocals because the drums and the vocals are what is graded most highly and carefully by the examiners. Okay. All right, Annie, this is one massive bass, but you love bass, so that's how it goes. It's a huge, huge boost on your channel EQ over here, the first one, which is you know, that's like plus 12 dB. It's a lot of extra dynamics in there, which we've got to be careful of. And without compression on here, it's going to be hard to control. Although, having said that, the sub bass it's low. I've not used this plugin before. Alex, have you? Is it just a ratio center? I don't think it is any sort of compression, but is adding in certain frequency bands here, which is cool. But yeah, that as well as the 100k boost is it's a lot of bass, but you know, as it's DI'd and you've got the DI amp sim over here as well, it's going to have, you know, a little bit more preamp control and some natural compression there. But I think maybe what you might be interested in using, if you've got this much in the low end going on, because low frequencies, lots of energy, is the multipressor. And what we can do is on this guy, we can just, you know, we can bypass frequencies that we're not bothered about really compressing, and just isolate like this low band here. And then we've got, you know, we can just start to compress this, the low end here as well. So we can bring this in. Have a little play with this. It's just some of our familiar parameters, you know, ratio, attack release, compression threshold. You can see some reduction happening now here in the low end. So you've still got that big, beautiful bottom end that we love, but we're just controlling the dynamics a little bit more and pushing that down, okay? But other than that, there's not much to say. It sounds really quite nice. You've got unconventionally a reverb on the bass here, which is cool. I mean, like for this sort of track, it's giving it that sort of like vintage, roomy sort of sound. A way to control the reverb, though, maybe like an improvement on a way to do this, which I'll show you here now. I'll show you here now real quick. What we do is we just send away to another bus, okay, and we're going to send this over to a bus post pan, so we're including the plug-in chain. And what we'll do, I can send, Jesus, oh sorry, over here, and we'll call this one bass verb. Let's put your bass reverb plugin on it. Okay, where is it? The chroma verb. Oh, come this way. And then what we're going to do, so it's the reverb channel is now over here, so let's watch this. So the reverb's over here on a separate channel now. We're just going to have the wet value because we've already got the dry value over there. So let's just hear the wet. Which we can blend in with the mix, but what we're going to do is we're going to compress the reverb every time your bass plays. So whenever your bass notes are playing, we're just pushing the reverb down a little bit so it's not muddying the mix and just having like this big washy sort of sound there, which is, you know, it's probably going to happen because, you know, bass, low frequencies, lots of energy. So let's try this. We're just going to sidechain compressor over to your bass. Where are we? Bass DI. So if we look on the histograph, Every time your bass plays, it's going to push down that reverb a little bit here. There you go, and you can see with the attack and release as well, you can time it musically to allow that reverb to breathe a little bit. Let's bring it back. And then when it releases, we get a little bit more reverb back in the mix. And you can always just have like a slightly larger size as well on the reverb if you want to put some more into the mix. There you go. You can start to hear that reverb sort of like expand and contract every time your bass is playing now. Let's hear that back with your bass and the drums. So you notice when I push the threshold up, not so much of the bass is going to attack that reverb, so we get more reverb in the mix, but with a lower threshold, more of the bass signal is going to compress that reverb. It sounds really tasty, like that in parallel. So you've got like a true dry bass and the wet bass as well. There we go, tying it together. That sounds great, Annie. Let's move over to the vocals now. I quite like mixing in sort of drums, bass, vocals order, because where the vocals take up some of like the mid-range, the upper mid-range and whatnot, before we start to bring in guitars and other bright instruments that take up that frequency space, you know, getting the vocals to sit right is important, particularly for like this like examined coursework. You know, you can make all sorts of choices in the future when it comes to mixing vocals. Smashing Pumpkins, obviously famously for their Siamese Dream album, the vocals were sort of more part of the mix, where they were sort of just like layered in with the guitars and the cymbals, because it was like that big fat fuzzy 90s grunge sound. And that's a choice, and that can sound great with a part of the mix. But for this purpose, and maybe for like most commercial pop recordings, bringing in the vocals and having them sit nicely in the mix is a go-to, or at least a skill that you should get under your belt a little bit, particularly for live sound as well. Let's have a look at vocals.
Flies are having fun, yeah, you know what I mean. In sleeping peace when this day is done, and this old world is a new world. It's a bold world for me, and I'm feeling good.
All right, cool. Your compression's great. You're trying some serial compression here, which is good with the slower bass compressor. Just, you know, because it's a gentle sort of vocal, really. We don't want to take too much dynamics away. So I love that you've experimented with this. You know, the dynamics of the vocal are sounding okay. They're sounding okay. Just a little bit of, you know, we're only taking a little bit off. This is your first compressor with a lower threshold, and then one just to catch some of those sneaky peaks that have come through. A more moderate 3-to-1 ratio, and then something a bit more gentle here. So really smart work on the compressors, Annie, and they sound great. Bit of a boost in this area here, which is sort of muddying the vocals a little bit. I love the brightness, the high shelf you put here. This is appropriate. But maybe, I think, we're going to maybe try and reduce some of this.
What I mean, butterflies are having fun, yeah, you know.
Just a little bit. I like that sort of dark timbre, because my vocals have a sort of like dark timbre to them anyway, so it does help. And the fact that you've got your serial compression there is taming that quite nicely. We just dropped it a little bit because it's sort of in like kick bass zone, but let's hear that with the bass actually.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
And to be fair, you got a quite a slinky bass sound, so that you know they're fairly even. It was just quite conscious because of like this that you've got going on the bass, and then this over here in the vocals. So maybe we can shift this over to maybe some of the upper lower mid range, I guess. Upper but lower mid range.
Yeah, you know.
Sorry. Yeah, exactly. That's just where we are there, about 500 hertz. Just a little bit after the bass boost you've got here. Yeah, absolutely. Just be mindful of that for sure. Now again, we've got the chroma verb on the insert, which is, yeah, that's a fine choice, but I think as well, we can try it, and if you're using as an insert plugin, keep 100% dry, because that's the original vocal take. But again, experiment with what we tried here with the bass, and we'll just send this over to a bus, new bus, and we'll call this one Vox Verb. And we'll just send over 100% of that post pan so we get all of your processing. Pull the chroma verb over, and then we'll put in a compressor. Sidechain it to the lead vocal, so whenever the vocal sings, it's going to be pushing down the reverb a little bit. What have we got here? New Vox, is that what it is? Yeah, New Vox. Same sort of thing, okay? So let's have a little listen here to the vocal reverb and the new vocal.
And yeah, you know what I mean.
Let's push up. Sorry, we'll take up the dry. 100% wet. Let's give it a bit more.
And yeah, you know what I mean. Butterflies all having fun. Yeah, you know what I mean. And sleep in peace when this day is done. And this old world is a new world. It's fun. Yeah, you know what I mean. Butterflies all having fun, yeah, you know what I mean. And sleep in peace when this day is done. And this old world is a new world, it's fun, yeah, you know what I mean. Butterflies all having fun, yeah, you know what I mean.
Great, so you can have a bit more control over the musicality of the reverb and compression there. So this is all in here for you to play with. I'm just going through some stuff gently, but let's hear that with the bass and the drums so far as well. Other than that, not many notes on the vocals really. Only great work with the serial compression.
And yeah, you know what I mean. Butterflies all having fun, yeah, you know what I mean. It's when this day is done.
Cool, this BV that's coming in, a lot of mid-range here. Obviously, you know, my vocal sort of timbre is in this area, but just be careful of too much boost, because this can be a real muddy area to mix in. If we obey the Fletcher-Munson curves rule, which tells us that the mid-range we are more sensitive to, and that the louder our mix, the louder those frequencies we perceive, we've got to be careful of boosting mid-range frequencies, because they can deceive us and appear louder as well. And if we push them in the mix, then they are going to cut through the mix so much more, which is important for vocals, but not too much that it gives us too much unwanted harmonic content essentially here. But this sounds good. Again, what have we got? There's just got the chroma verb on there. And again, if we're just dealing with some BVs, keep that 100% dry there. It's going to be fine as an insert if you're going to be using it, just to support the lead vocal. A little bit of chorus, nice choice too. A little bit of creative effects there, just to give the vocals some character. Nice work.
And yeah, you know what I mean. Butterflies all.
Great work, Annie. Yeah, nice thick sounding vocals going on. So drums and vocals, just a little bit of work going on there. Let's have a look at the electric guitar, bringing this guy in. And what's this got on it here? This is the, is this just a little solo bit that maybe Tom put in? Let's have a listen.
And I'm feeling
Great, nice choices with the delay and the compressor. Not much more needed really. If the capture's been good, then you don't want to worry about too much EQ. I think as this would have been maybe DI'd anyway, possibly. But it's always good, because these frequencies do build up, just to shave it off a little up either side of where you want that guitar to be. So keep an eye on the visualizer. Having some of those brighter notes come out a little bit and taking away some of that horrible mid-range that's sort of occurring with some of that guitar. Yeah, subtle, but just a little clean up here. What have we got? What else? We've got the piano sploss going on. Yeah, right on. I did miss that. Yeah, a little bit of depth on that electric guitar. Let's have a listen here. Although the tape delay is giving it some. Well, the delay does usually, it brings things forward in the mix. That is Noah screaming next door. Apologies about his gobby mouth. Yes. Um, but just yeah, because it's a beautiful sort of natural sounding track. So we just push it back in the mix a little bit with the reverb. Again, this is just the default one, but just to give you an idea. Yeah, lovely. All right, let's take a look at the piano then, that you got going on. No processing on this one yet, just bass and treble either side. Let's have a little listen to what the piano sounds like au naturel. All right, now when we did capture, we had, I think, I couldn't remember, it might have been two large diaphragms, or either way, you've got a stereo recording here, one more towards the bass and the trebles. You've separated these nicely in the stereo field, but then what you can do is, if one's more tailored towards the bass, let's give it some bottom end. All right, we don't want any, too much sub there at all, because we've got a lot of sub going on anyway in your mix. Let's just hear this. Oh, I assume that was bass. Yeah, piano bass on the left. A little warmer, and then the treble, if we're having this on the right, just a little bit of tone separation here. Let's bring this guy up. Really hear like that plinky treble thing going on, right? Yeah, just cleaning up a little bit of the mud in there, and with a little bit of EQ separation, it helps enhance the stereo image a little bit as well. Let's see how it's coming into the mix. It might not need too much compression, to be honest. Maybe just some mix bus compression here, just to bring the level up. There is a danger of something as delicate and as sensitive and dynamic as piano or acoustic guitars. If you've got them grouped with multiple microphones, individual compression and then mix busing could probably just be too much. You want to have some like dynamic truth, I suppose, in your mix. So maybe just some mix bus compression to bring it up. The piano room, what's this guy doing here in the middle? Yeah, good. Just adding a little bit of warmth in the back there. Let's have a look here. Pianos are really funny when it comes to EQing because they're so broad in terms of their frequency response and dynamics. It's almost like a vocal where you don't want to take too much away. All right, let's hear this with the drums and the bass, Annie. Yeah, I think some mix bus compression just to bring it up to the sort of like aggressiveness of your bass and drums, and maybe a little bit of reverb as well, just to add some depth, okay? The VCA is, or the digital one here, and the VCA ones as well. They're transistor based, they're emulations, of course, but they're what we call more transparent compressors. So they do a sort of like almost like objectional sort of like compression here without much sort of color and tone to it. So it might be a good choice to use something like this now and then on pianos, just to keep a transparent sort of sound, and we just use it for basic leveling really. Great, cool. It's really coming together, Annie. And then there's piano rhythm as well, right? Is this same kind of thing happening up here? Yeah, we can just give it a similar sort of treatment, really, just for consistency. So, oh, you've got an amp sim on there. Ah, and some, again, yeah, be careful with this top-loaded EQ here where we've got lots of boosting going on. That might have, maybe you've chosen to do that just to bring the volume up as well. What pedals have we got on there? Oh, it's just an empty one. Is there? Oh, that's cool. What have we got here going on the piano? Um, That's really cool. You've added some saturation there with the amp sims. Amp sims are great to use as mix bus on mix buses. They sound great on drums as well. If you can add like an amp sim to add some saturation and girth. Um, yeah, really cool, Annie, and a slightly different one on the room mic as well. And of course, these have their own EQs as well, so it sounds like it's been EQ'd in there. And of course, there's some reverb on the amps as well. That sounds really neat. I like experimental shit like this, Annie. This is great. Let's hear that with the bass drums piano and this piano as well. That's really nice. It adds like a really biting layer underneath it, Annie. That's a really interesting choice. I really like that. Last few things to move on to then is just that's the little lead electric guitar. What have we got here? Oh, just some toms. Tom G. Oh, this is not Tom's, but this is Tom, the person. Okay. Solo layers. Solo layers? Oh, right. Oh, here. Yeah, I think this is the solo that I put down, which I think I was just sort of like splurging over the mix. What's going on here?
Sun in the sky, you know how I feel. Yeah, breeze drifting by, you know how I feel. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life for me, and I feel good.
My vocal gets a bit leery now and then, and just evening out the dynamics a little bit. As you can see in the transients anyway, I'm quite quiet than loud. Sometimes it's nice to go in first of all and automate this before we compress, just to level some things out. Sometimes people do that, that could be a choice, but your choice of stereo compression is great. Yeah, just thought I'd give it a bit more of a makeup game, but also on your second compressor, just bring the ratio up as well, just to tame some of those louder ones. But I think it sounded pretty sweet, Annie. Go in and have a little play with this. What I'm going to do, just going to go to File, Project Alternatives, New Alternative, Mark, Feedback. But great work, Annie. Just be careful with your EQs. Love your compression work. Some of the stuff you've done on the piano. And just keeping an eye on those really hot drums and the stereo out as well, which I have ignored a little bit. But let's take a look and see how the stereo out's acting. Great, Annie. There's just a little bit of leveling to do, which you can take care of because, I don't have a lot of time to go through that at the moment. I've got a few more to get through. And yeah, keep an eye on the stereo out. We usually want this about -3 to -6 dB, so we've got some headroom for mastering. So just maybe pull some of these mix buses down and keep an eye on that. There is a plugin under metering, I think it is, yeah, level meter. And what this will show you like there's peak, so the 0 dB, there's like your ceiling essentially, and it's got this little yellow threshold here. isn't acting as a limiter. It's just showing you, so you can sort of set this. I think it comes in at -12 as default. But I like to mix up to -60 dB, like you. I like it loud. So if we look at this, you can see
It's a new dawn, it's a new day.
yeah, we've already peaked here. So this threshold it'll act as like a reminder to what to mix up to. And the great thing about these mix buses is that you can just start to tug down now these separate levels. But remember, we've got to, decibels, they run in a logarithmic value. So perceived volume, all that sort of nonsense. So if we tug things down, you can see some of those faders getting closer together where they separate the higher the volume. So what I'm saying is if you start to tug these faders down, then you've got to keep an eye on like perceived volume. It's not just a case of like pulling it down and saving your stereo out, but the fact that we'll perceive those at different volumes. So what I'm saying is like don't group them, pull them all down, but pull them all down and then have a closer listen to how they are relative to each other. Hopefully that makes sense.
It's a new life. Oh.
Like one good philosophy you could just have is just solo your drums, get them at a nice level, keep an eye on your stereo out, and then bring everything else into taste.
Yeah, you know what I mean. It's sleepy peace when this day is done. And this old world is a new world. It's a bold world for me. And I'm feeling good.
Great, Annie. I'll leave it there. I'll save this for you now as well, and you can just go through and have a bit of a play, and hopefully some of these choices here will help inform your next mixing too. But I also love the work that you've done with cleaning up, with the fades as well, and the colouring and whatnot. Very nicely organised, and the fade-ins and whatnot, taking care of the noise issues too. Yeah, great work, Annie. Top banana.